have a guest with me today.
Hello, everybody. My name's Attieh Elena. That's what I go by. Currently, I'm 26, and today we are going to be talking about some pretty cool subjects that touch home for me personally, and I'm sure for many other people that this will reach. As for a little introduction on my background, I guess I recently graduated business school. Um, what else can I say about myself? I used to groom and train dogs, but as of right now, I'm unemployed due to the COVID-19 issue. But I'm looking for a job, hopefully in what I just graduated in, which is business and leadership and entrepreneurship.
Awesome. Are you planning to do more school in the future, or like what is it exactly that you wanted? Because I know you did like business and all that stuff. Like, is there like a specific thing that you envision yourself doing?
I have a bunch of different business ideas kind of like boiling in the base of my mind and kind of growing into something at the moment since I have a lot of time at my hands. But like, as for going to school in the future, that's definitely on the table. I do like learning things. I like school. I don't mind it at all. But as of right now, I just want to kind of get my stuff off the ground. So I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to give my business ideas away. But I do have some ideas like from past things that I've done, which was with the dog industry. I also work as a model and actress, so I thought about also doing a little bit of work with that and maybe managing some people and expanding the industry a bit because it's very like close knit. They always look for only certain types of people, and I'm trying to broaden that maybe a little bit more. And then a bunch of other things, probably to help any sort of anything for myself. I just have so many ideas, it's hard to just put them all down in like a 5-minute little slot.
Yeah, I guess with like business and entrepreneurship and all that, like there's so many things you can do. And
Because
the
like 90% of the
change.
time I'm probably not like, those business ideas are probably going to flop and I'm going to have to learn from it. So that's why I have so many ideas, because I'm just going to keep going with the flow, right?
Yeah, exactly. With that, it's very, very broad, and things change all the time too. So it's like you never know. It's always good to have ideas, try them out, see what happens. Maybe you don't like it. You don't know that. So
Move on to the next, precisely.
yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Okay, so we're gonna kind of go into our first sort of topic here. So I want to know a little bit about your coming out story. So a few things about that. So when did you realize that you were attracted to women? Was it since you were little, or like what specific thing, like how old were you and what specific thing caused you to like realize this?
Well, for my coming out story, there's a lot of like kind of reasons why maybe I came out later to a lot of other people, but I always tell everyone not to be judgmental when it comes to your coming out story, or even judgmental on yourself, because everybody's story is different. Everybody's affected in a different way. We really don't know what their underlying stories are until you ask and actually give yourself the opportunity to listen to why maybe it was that early or that late or just at that time. To me, saying early and late is kind of a bogus statement, because then that's discrediting anybody's time, and it's just your time. It's your time. Nothing's wrong about that. But when I was younger, like a child, I didn't really think a whole lot about that kind of stuff. I grew up in a small Mennonite town, so my parents were immigrants, so they put me in a lot of extracurricular activities with a bunch of these other kids who were not immigrants. So I did a lot of following what they were doing and kind of mimicking their reactions to things and everything like that. And we were not educated very well on, in the town I grew up in, on homosexuality and queerness and all that kind of stuff. Like, nobody was really well versed in that at all. And we were a very small town. You only had a couple like colored people, a couple people that were immigrants, and then like everyone else was Mennonite farmers. So you were really exposed to a very limited anything. So what I did was, because I felt like such an outcast already as this little half Ukrainian, half Lebanese girl who didn't quite fit in, I just mimicked what everyone else did. I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of extracurricular activities. I flooded my mind with things to busy myself, because my parents also, when I was younger, were divorcing due to a lot of issues, which most parents kind of get. But with all that distraction, yeah, I kind of drowned my own thoughts and feelings when it came to my emotions towards women. I just thought, like, how everyone else would say, oh, you just have a girl crush, you just have a girl crush. And I would listen to that and believe that because that's what I grew up around. So I was just like, okay, add in another fact for a young person who is watching, like, sorry, my story is a little complicated, but add in a little like fact that my parents were divorcing, and when they were separated, my dad actually came out as gay. So that sent a whole spiral of emotions through my mother, of hate and anger and all those kinds of things. So me being exposed to seeing how my mother reacted to somebody that she loved and had a family with, even though they were divorcing, all of a sudden act so horribly to them, and then him act so horribly back because he's trying to protect himself and not lose his kids and all this kind of stuff. It made me literally hide within myself like nobody's business. I totally went deep inside the closet, went right into Narnia. Nobody could find me. I was in that wardrobe for years. I definitely, like, when I was younger, I thought I liked girls. I thought they were attractive and everything, but I just brushed it away. I was like, oh, I'm just appreciative of the woman's body, I guess. I dated boys in high school and everything like that. I was a terrible girlfriend, and I'm so sorry for all of them, because they, like, I dated like 3 or 4 in my time before I was out of the closet, and like I'm pretty sure I hurt them because I was not a great girlfriend. Every time I drank, I was all over my girlfriends, like friends that were girls. So it was a mixture of denial for majority of my young adolescent life. It wasn't until I moved out of the small town and started teaching myself about the queer community and all that kind of stuff, because my dad was already so involved at that point in my early 20s. And that's when I just decided, like, I'm not going to give really two craps what my mom thinks anymore. I'm an adult, and I should really, as a person, address my emotions and anything that I'm feeling on the inside, whether it be positive or negative or not. And yeah, so I came out when I was in my 20s, younger 20s.
And how did I know you said your parents are divorced, and it's probably a little different on how they both took it, considering your dad is gay. So
Yeah.
how did your parents take it exactly? Like, what were their reactions? I know they probably had completely different reactions.
My dad was a little surprised. He told me, we actually got a conversation about this the other day. He was like, I was actually a little surprised. You did a very good job at making me, like, not even like question you. Like, we all thought that you were going to do what your mom wanted and go to school, get married to a man, and have a lot of babies. And I'm like, oops. Sorry guys, but he's super supportive. He's super awesome. I couldn't be any more thankful for him in general. Like, without his support, this would probably be a lot harder. And without his also knowledge on everything, this would be a lot harder. But sorry, someone just knocked on my door and I'm just gonna ignore it because I'm busy.
I'm busy.
As for my mother, my wonderful mother, don't get me wrong, she's super, super great. I love her. She's an angel sent from above on this earth. Her and I have our differences, but we do love each other. I told her, I think it was Thanksgiving 2016 that I came out to her. We were in Winnipeg at my older brother's new condo, and my grandma was visiting from Ukraine. So we made this big dinner. It was me and my brothers and my grandma and my mom. And we were sitting at the table, and I knew this was the moment. I was already dating my ex-girlfriend, girlfriend at the time, and we had plans to go visit her hometown all the way down in Texas. So I don't like to travel somewhere and not tell my family, you know what I mean? So I was like, this is the time. This is the time. This is the time. You're just going to rip it off like a Band-Aid. You're in your own city. You can go to your own home. You're not trapped in your small town, so you won't have to deal with like crazy repercussions from your mother if there be them. So we ate dinner. It was great. I was super anxious like the whole time, sweating, could barely eat. And then we got to dessert. And usually with my little family, we have dessert and tea, and we play like a little video game or board game or something. I ruined that by saying, as soon as we were about to dig into our dessert, I was like, I have something to tell you guys. It's important. And they all just kept eating, not really looking at me, which is pretty normal in the household. And I just said, I'm going to Texas with my girlfriend.
Oh boy.
You could just hear the like heartbeat stop in my mom. You could just hear it just stop. Her only daughter just said she has a girlfriend. Like, I could just see my mom. Like, my mom is very fair-skinned already. She's from Europe, so she's very white, and she just turned red with anger. It was, now I laugh about it. It's been years. I laugh about it now. At the time, though, it was very frightening. She put, what's scary about her is when she's silent, when she has nothing to say, because she always has something to say. When she's silent is when she's really, really, really upset. I've only gotten that from her once in my life, so this was the second time. And she just put down her fork from her like cake and tea and just stared blankly at the wall in front of her and just was quiet for the rest of the day. I tried to talk to her. I tried saying like, how do you feel, Mom? Like, do you want to say anything? Do you want to get angry? Like, give me something, give me some sort of emotion. And she was like, nope, just completely ignored me, pretended like I was not there, did not answer any of my questions. My brothers were very supportive. They asked me like, oh, what's her name? This and this and that. My grandma doesn't speak English. She was just like, what? But my grandmother is very supportive as well. She's a lovely, lovely lady. I think there's nothing I could do wrong in her eyes, in my opinion. So, but yeah, that was kind of that. I didn't hear or speak to my mother for maybe about 2 weeks until she finally reached out to me, said she wanted to get me some groceries. So I was like, okay, let's go do that. We went and did that together, and she blatantly just said to me in that moment, she was like, you know, I don't care about that part of your life, and frankly, I would like to never hear about that part of your life. We can talk about school, we can talk about work, but anything to do with that part of your life I won't want to hear about it. And now imagine that in an all like really thick Ukrainian accent too. So I sat in the car when she was driving like that, completely silent. I was like, well, that's my life. Like I'm a part of the queer community. Like I date women. I want to be with a woman, like for the rest of my life. And you don't want to hear about any of that. Like I'm sure it's gonna seep into my school and my work and my health and all that kind of stuff. But alas, at this moment, we don't talk about it.
Yeah, and that's tough too, because as a girl especially, you usually go to your mom about like dating, stuff like who you're dating and who you want to date, who you like, and even dating like advice because you're struggling in some aspect of it. So it's like the fact that as a girl you can't go to your mom about like your dating life, like that is hard. And I do get where she's coming from, and people process things at different times, right? So in my opinion, I don't think it was necessarily because she hated that fact, but it could have been because she just needed time to process this and it made her uncomfortable at that time, right? Because she's not used to that. So yeah, it probably made her very uncomfortable. And I mean, and we can't really dismiss people's feelings and say that you're not allowed to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Obviously, we can't do that because, people do. And that's just, it's something they're not familiar with. So obviously, you're going to be uncomfortable. Anything you're not familiar with, and anything, not just this, but all different things you come across, if something you're not familiar with is going to make you feel uncomfortable. It's just
totally.
way it works, right? So that's probably what your mom was feeling in that sense. But I understand why you're upset because, as a girl, that's something you need your mom for, and you couldn't have that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never really had my mom for that kind of stuff. She's not really emotionally available. She likes to kind of brush things under the rug, and ignorance is bliss, right? So she prefers to just live blissfully, be kind to people, and ignore anything else, which is great, which is fine. She's still a great woman. But I'm lucky because I have my dad to talk about my dating life.
Yeah.
He totally gets it. Being a part of the queer community himself, he's a huge advocate for it too. Always supporting. He works with the government and the PCDA. Always on the Pride committee and stuff. He's a great guy. So that's really nice. But brushing back to like the fact of like my mom's reaction and it totally being valid, like I completely agree, especially being older now. Like at the time I was a lot more like, why mom, like why are you doing this to us? Our relationship is already so fragile. But I'm 26 now, and I can really see it from like a different point of view. Like you said, my mom grew up in the former Soviet Union. She immigrated to Canada with $10 in her pocket and a 3-year-old on her hip. She has so much more she's trying to learn about in this new culture and stuff all these years, that of course all this new stuff to her is so shocking when you're religious and all that. And then also she married a man that she had children with that she loved very much, and he loved her very much too, but in a different way. And he ended up coming out as gay himself. So I think she has a slight resentment towards people who are close to her who like the same sex. And that's totally fair. She needs herself to figure that out on her own. And I'm patient. I can wait.
Yeah. Is she a little bit, is she better now, or do you still not talk about that at all with her still?
I don't, she doesn't ask about it. I kind of will sometimes slyly imply something like years ago I would just lightly talk about my ex, and when my ex and I did finally break up, I said like, oh, like me and my ex are no longer together, and then like if things were happening that weren't so great during that breakup, and I was obviously upset and she could see it, she would ask like why I was upset, and I would respond with like, you don't want to know, but then she would kind of ask again. So she is taking her sweet time, but she's doing it, like very, very slowly. And I think with me um liking women, and then my little brother also being a part of the queer community, he came out after I came out, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years later. I think that really shook her world, because now she really can't hide from it, you know
Yeah.
so so she's doing it, she's doing the work at her own pace, and that's all I can really ask for.
Yeah. It's nice to see a little bit of effort. Obviously, change doesn't happen overnight, and there might never be a full change because she herself doesn't get it and
Yeah,
doesn't understand
exactly.
it. And that's fine, because you're not asking for her to understand. You're asking for her to accept you and
Yeah.
support you. That's all you're asking for. You don't need her to understand. So
No.
I think, if she takes her time, she takes her time, but at least she's trying. And I think that's the most
Oh,
important part, because some parents will completely shut their kids out.
oh yeah.
Like,
And
want nothing
I
to do with them, right? So
I have so many friends, so many friends and people that I know of and they know of that have been a part of those kind of family dynamics. And it's really hard to see. Like, I consider myself very lucky that even though my mom may not want to talk to me about majority of my life, she still wants to talk to me at least once a week. She still wants to send me cucumbers, you know what I mean? Like, she still wants to feed me, while there are some kids out there, and some kids who are still in the closet right now, who are probably fearing that their parents are going to do that to them. And that's terrifying, to be completely deprived when all you've known is those people caring for you. It's definitely scary.
yeah, no, I agree. So that's why I'm glad that there are people like your parents who are accepting of their kids no matter what. And I think it is super important for any parent to accept their kid with whatever they do or whoever they like, because realistically, like, they're your kid. You should love them no matter what happens. So I think a lot of parents need to take that into account. I know we're changing things now, because, back in the day, it wasn't something that was talked about. Just like, the whole mental health concept was also not talked about back then.
Oh
So
yeah.
none of these things were ever mentioned. So now our parents are like, what's going on? And
Yeah.
they're learning so much. Whereas, like, we almost came into this. Like, we learned it as we grew, because it started being talked about when we were young. And
Yeah.
then it kind of grew, right? Because I would say the conversation about some of these things probably happened very early. For me, anyway, it was very early high school
Mhm.
that I started hearing about, mental health and homosexuality and all that type of stuff. So I would say it was very, very early high school that I started to hear about that conversation even happening. But before that, it wasn't around. In elementary school, for me anyway, it was not talked about. In middle school, not really. Maybe like the slightest bit, but not much. So I think eventually that it grew into that. And now kids are actually being born into this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's more common in a sense, and people are less afraid, some people, to come out depending on their situation. Like, I know a lot of people, like, I see people all over social media, they're so open about so many things, like mental health, if they're gay, like all that. Like, people are so out there in their social media, and I think that's great that they're so comfortable. Even young kids, I've seen, like, there's like 15-year-olds that they're doing it. And I think that's a pretty good thing. Obviously, you are opening yourself up to criticism, but you are anyway with whatever you do.
Everybody's going to have
Everyone
an
criticizes.
opinion about what you do, what you say, what you wear, and what you eat. Like, every single person. Not everybody's going to like you. You could be the juiciest peach on the tree, and there's just going to be somebody that don't like peaches, Like, it's just the way it is.
Exactly, but I think seeing these kids so open and vulnerable like this is changing things, because
Yeah.
now it's almost reducing the scare factor of it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, being growing up as like a millennial and going through dial-up and then all of a sudden like fast internet, it was really intense to all of a sudden have these moments where I was allowed to like use the computer and the internet when my parents weren't around, and I could watch videos of like queer people and all that kind of stuff, and that gave me insight when I wasn't being taught in my high school. Because at my time when I was in high school, from like 2008, 9 to 2012, I grew up in a small Mennonite town. Mental health and that kind of stuff was really, really ill addressed, very minimally addressed. But then when my little brother went to the same high school 5 years later, his comparison, and he's in a different generation than his comparison is quite different. He says, no, we had a lot of like mental health opportunities, and we were like taught a lot about that. They were, even the students, the jock students, as a lot of high schools like to call them, or whatever, like hockey players, basketball players, all that, they were all super like supportive of kids who were more feminine or more masculine or more flamboyant or more loud or different, to put it in lamer terms, like, you know what I mean? So it's totally a generational switch, because from when I was in high school, I would have never came out in high school, like, but if I went to high school and my little brother did, completely different story. Maybe I would have told a couple of my friends at the time instead of telling them 4 years later when we're all graduated, you know? Like,
Yeah, it's so different. Well, because I'm just a year younger than you, so
yeah.
I basically grew up in kind of the same scenario as you, and it's just like, it's like if I were to openly speak about my mental health struggles back then, and I kind of I didn't really speak about it. I had very obvious symptoms.
Yeah.
So at school, everyone's like, "You're crazy. You're crazy. What is wrong with you? Go to a hospital."
Crazy girl corner.
Yeah, go to the hospital. You're nuts. So then, but now I say all these things and people are like supportive, and they're like, wow, I commend you for doing this and for teaching people and blah, blah, blah. And even people who were around when I was so-called crazy are now messaging me, and they're like, wow, like I didn't know that it was like that. Like I didn't know, I know more now than I knew back then, and you're not crazy. And I experienced similar things. And like, I didn't know that that's what was going on, right? It's just kind of like, okay, you act a little different, and people are like, you're a nut job. So, but now I feel like that's not the conclusion people necessarily come to. The odd person, obviously, because there's still stigma out there. So the
Yeah.
odd person, of course, still does that. But I find that a lot of people do not do that anymore, and people are more comfortable speaking about it because no one's really like bullying you in a sense. Like ever since I was like very public about my struggles, I have not had somebody message me like horrible things, being like, you're crazy, and like that sort of stuff. Like I haven't had that. And obviously when I was younger, I had that a lot. And now it's like people message me to say, wow, I totally relate to you. Or
Yeah.
like, you give me some advice. Like it's totally changed up the whole dynamic. I think we did a lot of the hard work
Yeah.
that, to make the stigmas go away, right? Like the new generation didn't really have to work for it. They're just like accepted right then and there. Whereas like we had to work. Our age group had to work to be accepted. So we put in the work, and now we're making a better environment for everyone else and for the future generations, because we're making everything be okay. That's like, if you want to do this, it's fine. If you want to act like this, fine. Like it's all just like everything's okay.
Yes.
Which is what we want in a sense. So that's, I think that's just really important, and that's probably why you're so open and comfortable speaking about this now, right? Because like you're 100% confident in this fact. You already came out. You're very comfortable in your own skin. So that's probably the reason why you're so open with everybody, and why, you're open to talking to people about it, just because you're just like, you know what, this is me. I'm not going to hide, because you said you hid for so long. So it's like, now you're just like, you know what? I'm out of hiding. I'm not going to go back into hiding. So it's like, I may as well just like be myself 100% of the time.
Precisely. Yeah. It's a combination of being in hiding for so long and being sick of that, and then seeing other people that I would have never anticipated feeling so close to, who are going through mental health struggles, coming out struggles, and all that kind of stuff, and relating to them and them sharing their stories and being vulnerable, because I've always struggled with vulnerability. In the past, I, one, could not come out, and two, I never talked about my mental health struggles. Everyone always thought I was just this happy-go-lucky, loudmouthed kid with no problems, because I was trained to think that I would be seen as weak and vulnerable without that. But with all of those little concoctions all together, the recipe just makes for a little boost of confidence in myself to hopefully do the same thing that all those people did for me, to be able to do for somebody else.
Yeah.
And every time we have like a national coming out day, or when it's Pride Month or anything like that, I always like to say, like, even if you don't know me or don't know anybody, or you're struggling with something mental health wise or whatever, reach out to us, because we actually want to talk to you. We want to connect with you. We also feel like we're alone 90% of the time. So it's great to share vulnerability and be able to do that. So
Yeah.
doing that complete switch has been a much better position for me, because when I was struggling to understand my own mental health issues and everything, I wasn't addressing it properly, and I gave into many temptations. I developed an alcohol problem. I was over drinking, excessively drinking, and constantly needing to be drowned in the idea that I can't think straight and I just want to sleep all the time. And then when I got older too, then I started indulging in drugs and stuff too. So I don't want other people to really go through what I have, even though it's not that bad. I came out of it stronger. I think it's very important for anybody to talk about their struggles, because vulnerability is frowned upon in this world, and we need to end that stigma totally.
Yeah, no, we definitely do, and I think we need to have more of an understanding of more mental health concepts. So it's like, I feel like we're not quite there yet. Like, obviously, people talk about anxiety and depression the most. That is
Yeah.
the thing that is most talked about. But there are so many other things going on that people still kind of think are weird. Like, for example, that situation with the bus and the guy who beheaded somebody on the bus. Obviously, this doesn't excuse it by any means, but people are like, that guy's crazy, blah, blah, blah. No, he's schizophrenic. That already came out. He is schizophrenic. He sees
Yeah.
things that are not there. He hears things that are not there. It's part of the disorder. So I feel
Mhm.
like, obviously, we're not going to excuse it, because, of course, it is terrifying, and you don't want to be in that situation. So obviously, it's scary and it's not right by any means. But at the same time, we need to also try to have some sort of understanding that this guy didn't leave his house that day with the intention of, cutting somebody's head off. Like, that is not, things happen in our brain. When your brain is sick, you do things you don't even realize you're doing. And depending how sick you are, when you're dealing with something like schizophrenia, you're hearing things and seeing things that are not there. So you're really, like, your brain is really impaired.
Yeah.
When you're drunk, when you're drunk,
Yeah.
you do something stupid. Sometimes you don't even have full awareness that you're doing something stupid. It's the same thing. Your brain is like clogged up. Your brain is foggy, and you're
Mhm.
doing something and you don't even know that you did it. Like, I bet you anything, this guy probably doesn't even remember that he did it.
Definitely.
There probably has no recollection that he was even doing it. He probably didn't plan it. Like, it's just the way it is. So certain things like that, and like with the whole panic disorder thing, because like I struggle with panic disorder, and every time I'm panicky, someone's like, "What's wrong with you?"
Mhm.
Still to this day, because that's not something that's talked about often, and that
Yeah.
actually a lot of people that are anxious struggle with that as well. It's just not talked about as much because it's almost like it's the anxiety thing, but it's actually separate in some sense to me
It's
anyway.
not just a symptom at that point of anxiety. It's its own disorder. And just like PTSD, it comes with a lot of symptoms, but you don't notice it really until, well, it's post traumatic, so it's literally later on. So you could literally think, oh, this traumatic thing wasn't actually traumatic, I'm handy duty daddy day. And then like 6 months later, you're enveloped in all of these different symptoms of like depression and anxiety and panic and possible delusions and hallucinations and all that kind of stuff. Like, I struggle with PTSD from multiple crazy things that have happened in my life. And I remember when it was re-triggered after I came back from Italy in November, a couple months later, I was just like, I was seeing things that wasn't even there. Like, of course, I was telling people, I'm like, tell me that this is my brain messing with me, because I thought I just saw like so and so or whatever wearing this, trying to be specific to my friends, and like the blah blah blah, and I'll explain what I saw, and my friends will be like, nope, that did not happen, you weren't even talking, where'd you go in your brain? And I'm like, okay, that that needs addressing right there, I need some help.
Yeah, we need to have like um more of an understanding on a lot of topics. I think obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon, but if we could start to, recognize mental health as a whole, and not just, it's not just depression and anxiety. It's definitely a lot more with that. And
All umbrella term.
yeah, no, exactly. So you kind of spoke a little bit. You said you got into drugs a little bit, and alcohol. Was there specific, any other specific mental health sort of concepts that you kind of came across throughout your life, and how did you realize that it was a problem, and then what did you do to address that to kind of become the person you are today? Like, how do you go through the whole recovery process?
Mhm. Well, as a child with the divorce, that was pretty messy. Like, I suffered from probably like a lot of anxiety and depression, and from a few like traumatic scenarios, some PTSD and acute stress disorder from that too. As a child, it was totally brushed by, though my parents were so busy, first of all, trying to be Canadian citizens, live their lives, make money for 3 kids, and also get divorced and all this other stuff. So a lot of my stuff was ignored, and I even ignored it. Every time I would feel anything as a child, I'd be like, my parents don't cry, neither do I. You know what I mean? So I would never really even think about it. And in high school, like, I definitely started falling into the numb kind of state, because all of the things that I had in the past from all the other stuff wasn't really addressed. Like, yeah, my parents did put me in like family counseling, and I had to go eventually from that into anger management, because all of my panic and all of that started just turning into straight up aggression. I was breaking things, slamming doors, throwing plates, hurting myself as a kid. And then you get older, and all this is improperly judged and improperly dealt with, and you start getting a little number, especially when you're going through puberty as a kid. So, like, the depression hits, I start cutting myself to feel a little something, and whatever. I don't do it anymore, thank you, therapists. But with that being said, I never really addressed any of that until I was actually involved in 2 car accidents. kind of within a few years of each other. My final car accident, I was T-boned by two cars and I actually got some brain damage. And that's when they actually really, like, by they, I mean myself and my family and people close to me, including my doctors, actually really started to notice that it's not just the brain damage that why my brain is taking such a long time to heal from the excruciating impact that was happened during that time, but there's also underlying issues. So that's when I got to see like an actual psychotherapist and all that, and was properly diagnosed and was given a lot of different mental health tools. And in that time, with those mental health tools, activities, exercises, meditation. I did do a little bit of medication after a while, but after the brain injury started repairing itself, I didn't need to take any extra like endorphins or anything because my brain was producing it on its own. So with the mental health exercises and constant therapy and all that, it got a lot better, and it actually opened the doors to address what was that extra thing hiding inside, which was liking women. And that's when I was totally able to go, okay, all of this kind of ties into each other, and if you don't address one, you like, if you miss one, you're not really addressing all of them. Like, you can't leave it as just that, because yeah, okay, maybe my parents were like, oh yeah, she's depressed because she was involved a lot in the divorce, so we're gonna put her in counseling in school. But that was their own diagnosis on me. Like, where was the other information maybe gathered from a professional or anything like that? But I did it myself, especially with the resources coming out of high school and all of it being opened up more so because of people like us and our age who are like, okay, there's something more to this, you know what I mean? This can't just be all of us being crazy and feeling this way. Like, so there's so many points in my life that I struggled with different aspects of mental health and mental stimulation and everything like that. So I would say it just breaks down into so many pivotal moments because they all changed me in different ways to make me this. And I just myself, if you're listening on a podcast.
Oh my god, I do that all the time, and then I say in the podcast, I'm like making references to like video, and it's like, oh wait,
You can't see.
So to kind of wrap this up, last final thing we'll say here. So if you could give any advice in regards to your own struggles, what would that be?
Well, in regards to my own struggles, because that's really the only advice that I think, logically give, I always say follow your gut. Multiple times in my life, I always tried to diminish what was going on in my own mental or my own body. Your body will tell you like what's up if you're struggling mentally or emotionally or anything like that. If you're uncomfortable in a situation and your body starts reacting uncomfortably, you should probably get out of it. So like I said, in regards to my own struggles, it's really important to follow your gut. Don't discredit yourself, and your boundaries are heck of important. Like, open up about them, be vulnerable. I still struggle with that, and that's another thing that I'm still learning to do. So I even am open up to people who are good at being vulnerable to tell me what's up, but just trust your gut, be vulnerable, and reach out if you really need help, because I promise you there's a lot more people in this world that want to hear from you than not at all.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for
Oh
that
gosh.
advice. It was really good advice, and thank you so much for coming on here and for
You?
sharing your story. I think a lot of people could definitely benefit
Oh,
from
I hope
from
so.
the situation. So
I hope so. yeah, if anybody ever has questions in regards to anything about my life or coming out, or just wants to talk about how to do it or advice, let them know to reach out to me. There's also so many great resources. I will send you like probably some links for that. You probably have them too, being a psychotherapist in training. So maybe I don't even have to do that, but there's so many different resources around our city and around the world to help with that. And like I said, you can reach out to me anytime. You can even probably reach out to Yam and she'll give you some dope advice too. So just keep on keeping out there. We have to stick up for each other, right?
For sure. Well, thank you again. And thank you
Thank
everyone for
you.
listening. And yeah, send us a message if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.